In April 1976, the analog static of the early 70s gave way to a series of specific, measurable transformations. At this moment, the suburban calm visible across Sydney Harbour was beginning to encounter new social pressures. Both Australia and New Zealand were operating within a leadership vacuum, following the recent and abrupt ends of the Whitlam and Kirk governments. Without these established political anchors, both nations were forced to look inward to define a new, independent Pacific identity. By isolating this single 30-day window, we can map the specific geopolitical and domestic forces that drove this realignment. The records from this month reveal a distinct tension, mass cultural unity occurring alongside violent, street-level dissent. Analyzing these 30 days provides a direct look at the mechanics of how modern trans-Tasman independence was engineered. Throughout the mid-1970s, the region was governed by a rigid expectation of total alignment with U.S. military strategy. That expectation was personified by U.S. Vice President Nelson Rockefeller during his high-profile arrival in Canberra. His presence triggered an immediate rejection. Massive crowds gathered to protest American policy in the Indian Ocean, challenging years of established diplomatic assumptions. For the first time, the public was visibly questioning the necessity of automatic compliance with Washington. These demonstrations quickly spread beyond the capital, leading to further clashes and roadblocks throughout the streets of Sydney. This sustained public dissent interrupted the suburban quiet that had characterized the start of the decade. Anti-war sentiment was no longer a peripheral concern. It was becoming a central theme in mainstream political debate. The open hostility directed at the Rockefeller visit exposed a crack in the post-war consensus, suggesting a public willing to diverge from the U.S. alliance. These diplomatic tensions soon manifested as a physical presence in Pacific waters. The arrival of the nuclear-powered USS Truxtun became the focal point for intense regional anxieties regarding United States naval dominance. As shown here, the warship navigated directly into Melbourne's port, bringing the nuclear debate into one of the country's most populated centers. The deployment then crossed the Tasman Sea into Wellington, effectively turning the naval visit into a regional crisis. This is a vessel from the Peace Squadron, a civilian mobilization that attempted to blockade the warship using small private craft. The visual of tiny leisure boats surrounding a nuclear warship created a powerful asymmetrical image of resistance. These maritime confrontations provided the tactical and ideological foundation that would, years later, culminate in New Zealand's formal declaration as a nuclear-free zone. While global tensions played out in the harbours, a different kind of realignment was taking place in the suburbs of New South Wales. The incumbent Liberal government under Eric Willis was struggling to maintain its hold as the representative of the Conservative establishment. Labour's Neville Wran countered with a campaign focused on localised, modernised governance, using the "Ran's our man" slogan to signal a break from the past. The campaign successfully engaged a new class of suburban voters who were looking for a departure from old institutional habits. By the final weeks of April, the state's political climate had reached its highest level of intensity in years. The eventual results in New South Wales functioned as a regional bellwether, indicating a broad generational shift toward new political leadership. However, the month's political fracturing was countered by the massive, unifying reach of 1970s pop culture. Music provided a shared experience that ignored political lines, most notably during the launch of Queen's Australian tour. Starting in Perth on April 11th, the band began a 5-state tour that dominated the national entertainment headlines. Simultaneously, pop music on the radio reached a level of near-total market saturation. ABBA's Fernando remained at the top of the charts for the month, becoming a constant presence in the daily lives of both nations. ABBA mania crossed nearly every demographic boundary, appealing to families across the region. It reached into almost every household, regardless of political or economic background. Grand pop escapism played through speakers, while political demonstrations occupied the streets. In a month marked by institutional fracture, these shared cultural moments provided a rare point of commonality across the population. But the unity found in pop culture had clear limits. particularly regarding New Zealand's domestic policies. On the sporting field, middle-distance runner John Walker was the undisputed face of national success. His victory in the Hastings Mile was a moment of genuine, widespread national pride. Yet while the public cheered for Walker, the government was conducting the Auckland dawn raids. The policy involved aggressive, early-morning police raids on the homes of Pacific Islanders to identify and deport visa overstayers. The contrast was sharp. The state was celebrating a national hero on the track, while its policies were actively fracturing local communities. The legacy of the dawn raids challenged the myth of a unified Pacific identity and remains a difficult chapter in the nation's history. As the month ended, both Australia and New Zealand turned their attention to the shared traditions of Anzac Day. In Sydney, the annual march provided a moment of somber reflection after weeks of social and political upheaval. Leading the parade were two of the final surviving veterans of the Boer War, representing the military traditions of a previous century. This final salute from the colonial generation occurred just as the younger marchers were beginning to navigate the requirements of a more independent Pacific future. April 1976 operated as a concentrated model of national development, a month where pop tours, street protests, and state-sanctioned raids collectively shaped the modern Anzac identity. The records of these 30 days preserve the exact moment the region began its transition into the modern era. While the geopolitical changes were vast, they were fundamentally experienced within the quiet, everyday setting of the suburban living room. This was brought to you by Stalls or Circle. Thank you for listening.